So, first of all, for people who don't know you, who are you, what's your role, and where do you work?
I'm Shahar, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Groundcover.
What would you like to share with us today?
Groundcover is building an observability solution for cloud-native environments. One of the things that we are doing constantly is trying to build a platform around making data as accessible as possible to do anything. Right, the base of Groundcover is supporting deep data correlations, root cause analysis built into the platform. As part of that, clearly, in the developing world of where we are living today, right, Groundcover is finally releasing its MCP server, which basically allows us to keep users where they're at, right, in their cursor, in their cloud, and investigate data like they're used to do with every other aspect of the development lifecycle, but with the ground cover data, which is very rich and powerful for that purpose.
And in terms of the pain points out there that people are dealing with, what problem does the MCP server solve?
So MCP is, in a sense, something that is much more broader than ground cover, right? It's a protocol designed to eventually allow LLMs to access data in a way that is more structured, right? So you can eventually use tools like ground cover and basically help an AI agent perform investigations, which are multi-steps that require, deeper research rather than just, a prompt and a response. And this is exactly what observability is, right? Observability is waking up in the morning, opening the logs page, performing a query, and then saying, something is off there. What's going on here? Going to, investigate the infrastructure or maybe the traces between the applications and just going back and forth. Like a very talented SRE, right, will be the one that finds that succinct piece of information from, huge volumes of data by tools that they develop, like dashboards that they kind of build out for themselves that help them figure out that needle in a haystack, right? MCP is basically allowing, I'd say, the regular developer or the regular DevOps person be that proficient SRE, right? It helps them use APIs that Groundcover has built for its regular users, but are now built even more granularly for the AI users that we're now, helping get on board into the platform. And they can help them augment what they do, right? Instead of just staring at the log screen and saying, how can I look for, weird anomalies, which we try to help our users regardless. Now AI can help you do that. And basically it will level up the investigation capabilities of most people, right? You don't have to be an expert in observability in the way the entire application stack of the organization works. Maybe you don't know well enough, right? How the other components work. And you can use AI to augment your knowledge and your ability to investigate, where ground cover is basically the bedding of the data, right? To kind of do all that.
And to dive into more on the technical side, how does the MCP server handle the unique telemetry challenges of LLM-based workloads, especially when dealing with high-dimensional token streams and non-deterministic outputs?
So I think that one of the questions is always context, right? In context windows and stuff like that in LLMs. I mean, if you have, logs is just an extreme example, right? People push in dozens of terabytes of logs per day, right? So the common response would be great, right? So the LLM service or the AI agent on the other side will just fail, right? It will just kind of drown in data, and there is no way to get around that. And I think that the sophistication is making sure that you're not thinking of an AI user the same as a regular user, right? We're used to thinking about regular users as people that can learn our query language, get proficient with it, right? Iterate in things that we've kind of built out through the UI that will help them investigate the data more and more. It's on us to create that in APIs, right? To make sure that the data is accessible in more succinct and very small correlated APIs that can create the same flow. So, for example, in logs, we create log patterns, log anomalies, things that basically an AI agent can use to get more succinct data from the beginning, and then query the data when they want to get deeper insights, and not the other way around. We're still thinking about a user, right? When you're opening a log screen in Groundcover or a Datadog or Grafana, you're used to seeing dozens of log, now search, right? And I think that's basically doing it right is building it the other way around, making sure that you can first give insights, give kind of something to pull on for the AI agent, and then he will know to do it much more intelligently, probably than the standard developer, because it can deduce context and use multiple APIs at the same time and kind of figure out where it actually needs to query raw data and start to getting into thousands and thousands of tokens to figure out what actually happened. Hopefully that happens last in the process if you build that right.
And what mechanisms does MCP server provide for tracing and debugging inference latency across GPU, model server, and upstream API layers, especially in distributed LLM and architectures?
So right now, for example, in GPU is a very interesting thing, and we get that a lot from customers. Groundcover is still not covering GPU natively, but we are planning to go into that as well and allow people to investigate GPU performance as well. But it can allow you basically to cross-section a lot of information between infrastructure metrics, tracing of the application, logs emitted from the application, events from the infrastructure, and provide a very deep drill down by creating that context with an agent basically knows what to query next. And we can see that when people play with the Groundcover MCP, it's not that they couldn't reach the same root cause, right? It's the speed, the efficiency, and basically even the use of the system that is sometimes evasive, right? If you're a user, right, you have to go through maybe 6 different screens and query languages and intersections to figure out what you have to do. And you can see the API agent, do the AI agent do it like 20 queries in 30 seconds and reaching the root cause. So we're definitely in the place where we're trying to monitor infrastructure deeper. We work with a lot of AI companies, right, that have those needs as well. Going into LLM observability also from our product side, right, to allow you not just to use MCP or AI to query the data, but also monitor your use of AI because everybody's doing that. So a lot of things coming up our sleeve, right, in the next few months.
That's great. And can you walk us through how MCP integrates eBPF-based observability with application-level metrics for LLMs? Specifically, how does it correlate system-level signals with model-level behaviors like drift or degraded output quality?
So specifically, I mean, one of the things that we focus on, right, is eventually allowing you to get information about the observability of what happens with your system, right? You can use Groundcover as one of the tools in your tool chain, right? If you're investigating specific stuff and you want to also investigate the performance of your models, right? You probably have more signals that you can punch in that will eventually allow you to kind of intersect stuff, right? Things coming from our MCP server to other MCP servers that you might have inside your application, monitoring other stuff that you would like to do. One of the things is that we want to make sure that it's kind of a tool in your tool chain, right? So it's mostly about if you're working in Cursor, right? Even next to your code, right? Next to your code base, you might want to ask questions from tools like your actual code base or file system and Groundcover as well. So we hope that people can create more complicated use cases of monitoring stuff they care about, while always kind of using Groundcover to augment the data that they're already using to monitor, their performance or their LLM performance, as you kind of mentioned.
And could you share the before and after of this announcement about MCP server?
Yeah, I mean, before that, I think that people were already starting to do it themselves, right? We saw a lot of companies basically saying we want to automate some of the queries that Groundcover has because we know that fetching data from here, fetching data from there will help us figure out the problem. We saw that with people building complex alerting flows where they can kind of gather information into the alert to figure out context that maybe was specifically important for them. MCP basically is saying 2 things. One, we want to make sure that we keep you where you're at if you want to stay there, right? We're not forcing you into a magic wand AI bar, right? In the website saying in our UI saying search for something. If you want to work close to your code base with other tools because you're building in this century, right? You're building code in this century, and you want to work with us as an extension of your AI tooling, then we're going to be there. And second, it's much more flexible to whatever workflow you want to build, right? So if you want to bring in context of data and you want to do that agile with an AI agent, you don't have to think about it and build these workflows into the UI and into Groundcover. You can do it on the fly, like these models can do, right? So it basically simplifies a lot of use cases that customers maybe couldn't do, but also in some cases keeping them closer to where they care about, right? Sometimes it's the Groundcover UI, and sometimes it's their terminal, a code base, right, where they want to stay. So I think it's just us being more native with their stack in a sense.
MCP server, is it open source and part of the CNCF landscape?
MCP server is basically, kind of a protocol or an approach, right? So our specific product isn't open source, but we are using the same mechanism that Anthropic released, because we want to make sure that, again, we're a tool in that tool chain. We'll continue doing that with other standards that will pop up. The landscape is changing so quickly that it's hard to predict what's going to be in 2 months, right? But I think we owe it to our users to stay up to date and make sure that whenever there's something that an open source standard maybe released in a few months, right, that will solidify some of this stuff, then Groundcover will definitely be there, right, to make sure that its users can use the data. It's their data eventually, right? We provide the eBPF sensor, the infrastructure, the mechanisms to collect a lot of context and a lot of data. We want to make sure that they utilize it as they should, specifically in the AI era, right? We have the advantage of collecting so much data with eBPF, storing it so close to the customer with Bring Your Own Cloud, which is our unique architecture. We want to make sure we use that, and AI is going to be a significant part of that advantage.
And for people that might not be familiar, what's Groundcover's business model?
So Groundcover is basically monitoring your stack in any cloud-native environment. Kubernetes specifically is kind of where we shine, but anything that is a kind of cloud-native environment and related to modern stack, we're definitely a great option. And the model right now is very unique. Basically, we're built on top of an architecture that I just mentioned called Bring Your Own Cloud. We're basically not a pure SaaS vendor. We're kind of a perfect mix between on-prem data plane and a SaaS UI or control plane. Basically, it allows customers to get that vibe of a managed experience, accessing the UI, not caring about managing their stack, their observability stack, because they have a day job. But on the other hand, we're storing the data on-premise, secure, private, and also Groundcover isn't ingesting all the data of the customer. Therefore, we're not built on top of a pricing model, which is ingestion based, which is basically the entire observability landscape. So we can create a different model, which is basically right now a single SKU product, just pricing by the number of hosts that the customer is using. And it allows us to create much more predictable pricing, much more fair pricing model that customers really love.
I know you mentioned a bit previously about some of your competitors like Datadog, but could you just go over who your main competitors are and what differentiates Groundcover, particularly keeping MCP server in mind, from those competitors?
Yeah, so we look at the main platform players in the market as our competitor, right? It can be Dynatrace, New Relic, Grafana Cloud, Datadog. These are the main guys that Groundcover eventually tries to replace. Eventually, they're built as a SaaS classical model, saving all your data, at the customer at the vendor's premises, charging you for data volumes in a very unpredictable, very complicated way. Groundcover is unique in two ways. One, again, we use eBPF. It's a very, very strong method to collect data. We're not the only ones in the market using it, but we are the only ones which are actually eBPF-first, right? We build our entire experience, including APM and deep insights from the application, on top of eBPF. So onboarding is basically frictionless. It takes like 60 seconds to install Groundcover and get infrastructure monitoring to APM, like all in one place. And the second is that we manage and store all this data on your cloud premises. So if you care about privacy, if you care about security of the data, if you don't want to pay for these data volumes, if you're already kind of, quoting yourself and choking the data volumes you send over to Datadog or New Relic because you cannot afford that, if you're deactivating some of your components inside Datadog or New Relic because it doesn't make sense from an ROI perspective, this is exactly where Groundcover kicks in. We have the fire hose of data from eBPF, and we know how to store it cost effectively on your premises and be on your side and not charge for that. So you can have 5x, 10x more data. And in the AI era, that's exactly what you need, right? You need more data, more context, more correlation, more structured data in the same place. And people are currently in the opposite situation. They have, multiple data verticals in different SaaS vendors. The data isn't practically their own. Sometimes they even pay for API queries, right, on top of this data because it's stored in a remote place. It's hard to even use tools like AI to cross-section the data, query it over the network, figure out what's going on. This is exactly where Groundcover can have a significant advantage, right? Once you're built on top of this bring your own cloud approach, then basically you own the data. It's running in your cloud premises, in your VPC. Right? You can integrate whatever you want to it. You can query directly, query it with an MCP. We're going to help you do it, but there is no kind of cost limitation or even network wiring limitation that will prevent you from doing that. And this is exactly what I think most vendors are going to be eventually locked in somehow, right? When you're in a SaaS model, it's hard to allow your customers to query terabytes of logs per day if they want to query it over AI, right? You have to charge them for that somehow. We can kind of escape from that loop.
Great. I think it's very helpful for people to know that that option exists. Shahar, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do so?
So we, groundcover.com is the best way. We have a playground at play.groundcover.com. You can check out the product. We have, a very detailed docs about our MCP server. We have a blog about it in our website. Read about it. Try out the product. It's a free trial, either by installing or playing with the demo. And reach out in our Slack community if you want any help. There's a link in the top right of our website. We're here to support you guys.
Perfect. Shahar, always a pleasure talking to you. Congratulations on the launch and look forward to hearing about it soon. Take care.
Thanks, Mark.
Cheers.